What's going on, everyone? It is Tuesday, November 23rd, holiday week. We got Thanksgiving coming up here on Thursday. Some folks want to act like it's already Christmas season. If you're one of those people, I'm not going to discriminate. I love Christmas as much as the next guy, but hey, let's enjoy Thanksgiving while we have it. But I digress. Let's get into today's episode. If you're new here, I'm Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks for Sports Illustrated on Fan Nation. And I am home in San Jose, so my lighting setup's a little bit wonky, but I wanted to get a YouTube video and a podcast, so ask that you bear with me. We got some news to talk about, folks. Tuesday morning, news coming in that 2022 Oregon offensive line commit Percy Lewis has reopened his recruitment. Decommitted from Oregon, and that is the third decommitment of the month for the Ducks. So a lot of people are asking, is there good news on the horizon? What do we make of this decommitment? Is it time to panic? And I'm not saying it is. We're going to, address all those, some of those questions on this episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. But let's start off with this Lewis news. So Percy Lewis, he was one of the earlier commits in the 2022 class for the Ducks. Offensive lineman playing at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, way out there in the southeast. So he committed March 2nd, 2021. So like I said, one of the earlier commits. Believe he was the first offensive line commit for this class. And I mean, even though Oregon's recruiting at a national scale, I think it still holds true that it's tough to hang on to those guys that are from really far away as the national signing day gets closer. Lewis was out in Eugene for his visit in June, so they got him out here they got him out to Eugene, I should say. I'm not in Eugene currently, but just to kind of diagnose or diagram, I should say, what was going on in this recruitment. After he had been committed to Oregon, some pretty big schools came calling. I think the biggest offer that comes to mind is Georgia, right? You look at them, number one team in the college football playoff rankings. And then you got in-state schools, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Missouri was also another school that was involved. So, with him being a guy who's playing out in Mississippi, I think it stands to reason that it would give you cause to pause a little bit if you have those big-time SEC programs that come calling and are saying, hey, we want you to come play for us. And Ole Miss has been playing really well. Look at their offense with Matt Corral. I know he got a little bit banged up. But that offense has been really, really successful. So, and then you look at the Oregon offense, and I think that it's been rough going, right? And I think it's reasonable, for someone to be concerned with, the level of play that we've seen on the field, especially against Utah. But I don't think that it's the only thing that recruits are looking at, right? You look at some of these programs that are rebuilding, right? The play on the field can be pretty terrible at times, and they'll still stay true in their commitments. But it goes without saying that Oregon isn't the same as those rebuilding programs. Oregon is right on the doorstep of competing. So just to kind of give some final thoughts on this Percy Lewis decommitment, I should say, and kind of what else, notes from that. I mean, if you're looking at a position that the Ducks could afford, if you want to say if they could afford a decommitment at, it's definitely got to be offensive line. There were 5 commitments in the Oregon class along the offensive line, so the Ducks still have 4. That's how math works. You got Dave Yulee from Washington, Michael Wooten from the Southern California footprint, headliner of the class, Kelvin Banks, out of Texas, and Cameron Williams, also out of Texas, Duncanville. And I think that is one of the good positives. I mean, even though 3 decommitments is never a good thing, right? The good thing that I think can be drawn from all of this is that they aren't losing commitments from any of their big-time pipeline states. You look at states like California, Arizona. They resurrected Texas as a pipeline state, but when you're thinking about Oregon football recruiting and historically how they've built out the program, it's been the West Coast. So those West Coast guys are things are looking pretty solid right now as far as we're not seeing decommitments there. But you always got to follow everything, right? I'm not trying to suggest anything's happening, but you just never know. I mean, sometimes stuff pops up. And yeah, so I think that was everything that I wanted to say on Percy Lewis. Talked about the guys that are still in the fold on the offensive line. But I saw one of my followers on Twitter in response to the story. They tweeted, is there any good news? I feel like that, it's kind of been like nothing but bad news coming out with Oregon recruiting lately. And I wouldn't say that I necessarily have good news, but rather the potential for some good news, right? Let's see. So Cyrus Moss, big time defender, 2022 Oregon recruiting target out of the Nevada State champion Bishop Gorman Gales. In case you missed it, he released his top 3. You got Oregon, Alabama, and Arizona State. Kind of a little bit of a shocker seeing Arizona State in there, but Herm Edwards has really built out a strong staff, and I think that with some of the NFL experience that they have, guys like Antonio Pierce, I think that it helps to have NFL staffers, people with NFL experience on your roster, because on your coaching staff, because what do so many of these guys want in their colleges? They want to be assured that they're going to be able to make it to the league. And how do you do that? You bring in guys that have done it at a high level and know what it takes to get there. So that's a note on Arizona State, but things are going well for Oregon with Moss. They really are. You talk about a guy that was out for the Saturday Night Live visit. He was out in July, and he was one of the top performers there. And then he since in the summer, he's been able to go out to each of these 3 finalists, right? I had a video on the YouTube channel, and then I also had a podcast episode talking with Moss about his final 3 schools, went in depth on each one of them, kind of what he's seeing there, some of the relationships that he's built. And I think for Oregon, you think about him, and I told him, you probably get asked this a million times, but the KT pitch is big. It's really, really significant for them that really significant for him. Carries a lot of weight, I should say, that they're kind of pitching the Kayvon Thibodeau pitch, and that he told me that it looks like it's really big that they have someone that has done it. It's proven. He's going to be a high draft pick. He's had a great career at Oregon. Looking like this will be his last season, obviously, but he's coming to town for the Oregon State game, so that'll be big. He's eyeing an early signing day decision, and then he's going to go public with his commitment at the All-American Bowl. So it's always good to have guys coming back on campus ahead of that decision. He is going to get out to Bama as well, so it looks like they're probably going to get the last visit based on our conversations. But like I said, it's always good to have a big time target coming back on campus for that Oregon State game, so you can just show them what the atmosphere is like. Talk about the struggles that they had last week. This is another big opportunity. Put the right foot forward with these recruits. Get that win over Oregon State. Go to the Pac-12 championship game. Win the Pac-12 championship. Go to the Rose Bowl, and then still end the season on a high note. I know that a lot of fans are at the point where the Rose Bowl would be a disappointment, but that's kind of the situation that we're in as far as where Oregon's at right now, where that's what you want to strive for. So that's kind of the latest with Moss. He's going to be a visitor for this Oregon State game, it sounded like, based off of what he told me. And then Darius Clemens, he's another guy that I was able to see recently. I was out in Tualatin for that game, Westview and Tualatin, in the Oregon playoffs, the Oregon State playoffs. And, season didn't end the way he wanted it to. It was a pretty ugly game. But I was able to talk to him after, kind of got a little bit more intel on kind of how his recruitment has been going. He's been able to take visits out to each of his finalists. He's working from a final 3 of Penn State, Auburn, and Oregon. And, the Ducks are really pushing hard for him in this one. I had a recent update on Ducks Digest, and you can go ahead and go read that if you go to the site. And it sounds like, the Ducks are in a really good spot here. They are talking to him a lot. After when I was talking to him, he's saying, they'll probably hit me up after this game. They're probably going to put on that full court press. So I think that they're in a really good spot there. He was telling me that, Auburn and Oregon are really the ones that are, recruiting him the hardest. Penn State is kind of falling off a little bit. So I think that's good. And then obviously we were talking about Cyrus Moss coming to town here in the coming days for the Oregon State game. It sounds like Clemens is going to be here for his official visit to Oregon, and it's kind of looking like a similar deal with Moss. He's gonna be making his decision on the early signing during the early signing period, and then he's going to go public with that decision um, at the All American Bowl. And then another guy that I think a name that is worth watching is Josh Connerly. There's some I guess rumors, or it's out there that he's going to be visiting Oregon this weekend for his official visit. So I just want to put it out there that I haven't confirmed that yet. I need to work on confirming that. That's kind of one of my items this week, but that's certainly a big name to watch, especially when you look at Percy Lewis reopening his recruitment. If the Ducks can get Connerly on campus, play well, make a good pitch, then I think that could go a long way for them. You look at, he's coming out of Seattle, Rainier Beach. Be great to get another good player out of Washington. I don't even think it's necessarily like you steal one from the Huskies, because they just haven't really been recruiting at a good level at all. But I think that it'd be good because you grab that talent that it's not in their backyard, obviously, because he's not from Oregon, but the Pacific Northwest, isn't really known for putting out a ton of high level talent on a year in year out basis compared to a state like California or Texas or some of these other southern states. So I think when they do have, can't miss prospects that have legitimate interest in the Ducks, as we see here is the situation with Connerly, you want to get those guys on campus. So Connerly is a name to watch out for. I'm going to work on confirming that, try to get that out there and then see if he is indeed going to be at Oregon. But if that is the case, then that's pretty big. So that's really the update that I have, right? A lot of people are kind of freaking out, and I think that I'm not saying, I think it makes sense to question where things are at right now with Oregon football recruiting, but this staff, I think that they're gonna recover from this, and I think that they have some pieces in place with some of the guys that I mentioned in this update video. Early signing day is more and more important each year, so we're gonna have to see what happens there. I think you want to obviously hang on to the guys that you have now, get those guys to sign, get as many of them to sign as possible. Some of them are enrolling early, so that's going to be a big win for the Ducks to get as many of those guys to sign and enroll early, get here in January, and then in-home visits. That's another really big thing that I think is worth being mindful of. Staff being able to get out on the road, get into the homes of some of these kids and talk to their families. That sounded kind of weird when I said that, but visit these recruits and talk to their families. Just refresh those relationships. Hopefully, I'm sure Oregon and other schools will be battling to get as late of a visit as possible, as close to the early signing period as they can. But I think that's another big thing that people need to be mindful of, because I think that can help you make up some ground. Recruits know that these coaches have a lot of options, a lot of places that they can go to spend that time, and they prioritize. If they prioritize getting out to see you and your family, then I think that'll carry some weight. I don't know if it's gonna win over recruits. Maybe it could. That's what we got to talk to these guys and see what goes into their whole decision. But I think in-person visits is really big, because we didn't get that last year. So something to be mindful of. That's all I have for this update. Go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Oregon Football Max Torres. That only takes a second out of your day, and it is completely free. Probably the easiest way you can support me and what I do cover in Oregon. And go ahead and follow me on Twitter at mtorsports, that name on your screen. And then check out the other episodes of the podcast, the Ducks Dish podcast, trying to do this more regularly, bring on some guests. Talked about Cyrus Moss on the pod. Also had an Oregon linebacker commit, Devin Jackson, on a little while ago. So that was a really cool conversation. So that's all I have for this one. Thank you for tuning in. Everyone have a safe and wonderful Thanksgiving. And we'll see you for some Oregon State preview content and over on ducksdigest.com. Thank you. Take care, everyone.